Shocking, right? For thousands of years, people have been taught that Adam and Eve were humanity's starting point, the only two humans created directly by God. Let's get straight to it. Genesis doesn't give us one creation story. It gives us two. And these two accounts don't perfectly align. In Genesis 1 verses 26 to 27, we see God creating man on the sixth day. But not just one man, this man is described in plural terms, male and female he created them. Humanity, collectively, is brought into existence, seemingly all at once. No names, no garden, no dust or ribs, just humanity, made in God's image, given dominion over the earth, and told to be fruitful and multiply. But then we turn the page to Genesis 2, and suddenly the narrative shifts. Here, God forms Adam, singular, from the dust of the earth, in a far more personal and intimate act of creation. Adam is placed in a specific location, the Garden of Eden, a cultivated paradise distinct from the untamed world of Genesis 1. And unlike the humanity of Genesis 1, Adam isn't created alongside a woman. Eve doesn't appear until later, made from Adam's rib. Now, here's where it gets really interesting. The two stories don't just differ in detail, they outright contradict each other in the order of creation. In Genesis 1, humanity is created after plants and animals. But in Genesis 2, Adam comes first, then the plants, then the animals, and finally Eve. How do we reconcile this? Are these two stories describing the same event, or are they telling us about two entirely different acts of creation? If Genesis 1 describes the creation of male and female humans across the earth, could there have been other humans living outside of Eden, before or alongside Adam and Eve? And if so, what does that mean for everything we think we know about the origins of humanity? It doesn't stop there. The name Adam itself adds another layer of intrigue. In Hebrew, Adam means man or humankind. It's not inherently a proper name, it's a term that could refer to humanity as a whole. So, was Adam an individual, or was he symbolic of an entire group of early humans? Or could he have been just one of many, chosen for a special purpose in God's plan while others existed elsewhere? Let's not forget about the world Adam is placed in. In Genesis 2, after Adam's creation, God plants a garden specifically for him. But what about the rest of the earth? It's wild, untamed, and seemingly already populated with life. Later in the narrative, when Adam and Eve's son Cain is banished, he goes to a place called Nod, where he fears for his life and finds a wife. Who were the people living there? Where did Cain's wife come from if Adam and Eve were truly the only humans alive at that time? These questions poke massive holes in the traditional view of Adam as the first and only human. What if Genesis 1 is describing the creation of humanity as a species of men and women spread across the earth, while Genesis 2 zooms in on one particular man, Adam, chosen to be the focus of the biblical narrative? It's not just possible, it's entirely plausible based on the text itself. When we read Genesis 1 verses 26 to 27, there's a profound statement that demands attention: let us make man in our image, after our likeness. And then, male and female he created them. This isn't a vague reference, it's a direct assertion that humanity, both male and female, was created. Genesis 1 paints a picture of humanity's creation as something universal, global even. There's no Garden of Eden mentioned here. No localized focus. Humanity is created and immediately given a monumental role, dominion over the earth, over every living thing. They're told to be fruitful and multiply, and to spread across the face of the earth. This is expansive, dynamic, and points to the existence of more than just two individuals. The language here is critical. It's plural from the beginning. Let us make man in our image, God says. And then it follows, male and female he created them. The shift between us and them isn't accidental, it's a deliberate choice of words that suggests collective creation. This is humanity as a species, not a solitary couple. And yet, traditional interpretations often try to cram this into the narrative of Adam and Eve from Genesis 2, treating them as the first and only humans. But let's step back for a moment. The text doesn't explicitly name Adam and Eve in Genesis 1. It doesn't place them in Eden. It doesn't even suggest they're the only ones on earth. These details are conspicuously absent, and that absence is telling. When you compare this with the broader themes of Genesis 1, it becomes clear that the scope of the chapter isn't local or individual, it's cosmic and universal. God is establishing humanity's role in the created order. This isn't just about one garden or one couple, it's about a species set loose upon the earth to flourish and take charge. The Hebrew word for man used here is Adam, but it's not a proper noun. It's a term that refers to humankind collectively. This isn't a hidden detail, it's right there in the language. Yet, for centuries, this plural, collective creation has been overlooked or dismissed in favor of a narrative that centers only on Adam and Eve. But consider this, the command to be fruitful and multiply. For humanity to fulfill this command, wouldn't it make more sense if Genesis 1 describes the simultaneous creation of multiple humans across the earth? This creation narrative doesn't limit itself to a single man and woman. It's expansive, designed for a thriving, growing population. The implication is clear. Genesis 1 sets the stage for a broader human story, one that doesn't begin and end with Adam and Eve. Genesis 1 doesn't describe humanity's creation as a special event for a chosen pair. It's an act of divine creativity on a massive scale. Humanity is made in God's image, not one man or one woman, but all of humanity. This divine image is shared collectively, not individually. It's a feature of the human race, not a title bestowed upon two singular figures. So, why has this interpretation been sidelined? Why have we been taught to see Adam and Eve as the sole representatives of Genesis 1, despite the text itself suggesting otherwise? Could it be that centuries of doctrine have been shaped more by tradition than by the actual words of the Bible? One of the most fascinating aspects of the Bible's creation narrative lies in its sequencing, specifically, how Genesis 1 and Genesis 2 seem to tell the same story in completely different orders. This isn't some minor discrepancy. It's a glaring difference that has puzzled scholars, theologians, and curious readers for centuries. In Genesis 1, the timeline is clear and orderly. First, the heavens and the earth are created. Light separates from darkness, waters are divided, dry land appears, vegetation springs up, and then animals are brought forth. Humanity comes last, on the sixth day, as the culmination of this grand, cosmic process. It's a poetic, almost rhythmic unfolding of events, with each day building toward a climax. Now, step into Genesis 2, and it's like you've walked into a completely different version of the story. Here, the sequence is reversed. Adam is created before plants and animals. The text even says that no shrubs had yet appeared on the earth because there was no one to work the ground. Then, after Adam is formed, God plants the Garden of Eden and causes trees to grow. Animals are created next, seemingly as an attempt to find a companion for Adam. Finally, Eve is made from Adam's rib as the solution to his solitude. This isn't a subtle shift. The order of creation in Genesis 2 completely appends the structure of Genesis 1. Plants come after Adam, not before. Animals are formed in response to Adam's needs, not as part of an earlier, independent creation. And most strikingly, humanity doesn't appear together as male and female. Instead, Adam is created alone, with Eve appearing only after a series of events. These contradictions aren't easy to reconcile, and they raise a profound question about the intent behind these two accounts. Why would the Bible include two narratives with such striking differences? Some argue that Genesis 1 is a broader, universal account, while Genesis 2 focuses on a specific, localized event. But that explanation doesn't address the reversal in the order of creation. The shift isn't just about scope, it's about the very nature of the story being told. The implications of this difference are huge. Genesis 1 presents creation as a systematic process, one that follows a divine logic. Humanity is created last, symbolizing its role as the pinnacle of creation. Genesis 2, on the other hand, is far more intimate and experimental. Adam is created first, almost as if he's the starting point for everything else. It's a hands-on narrative where God reacts to Adam's needs, planting a garden, forming animals, and eventually crafting Eve. The two timelines suggest two very different views of humanity's place in the world. In Genesis 1, humanity is part of a grand, interconnected order. In Genesis 2, Adam becomes the center of the story, with the rest of creation seemingly revolving around him. This divergence raises deeper questions about the nature of these texts. Were they written by different authors with distinct perspectives? Many scholars believe that Genesis 1 and Genesis 2 come from separate sources, each reflecting a unique theological viewpoint. Genesis 1 is thought to belong to the priestly tradition, emphasizing structure, order, and the transcendence of God. Genesis 2, meanwhile, is attributed to the Yahwist tradition, which focuses on God's personal, relational nature. But here's where things get even more intriguing. Genesis 2 doesn't just present a different order of events, it also introduces an entirely new dynamic between humans and the natural world. In Genesis 1, humanity is created to rule over the earth. In Genesis 2, Adam is placed in Eden to work it and take care of it. The emphasis shifts from dominion to stewardship, from cosmic authority to intimate responsibility. The name Adam is one of the most recognizable in history. For many, it immediately conjures the image of a solitary man, the first of his kind, walking in the Garden of Eden. But what if the name itself tells a more complex story, one that challenges this traditional image and opens up entirely new possibilities about humanity's origins? In Hebrew, the word Adam isn't just a name. It's a term that means human or of mankind. It's used throughout the Bible to refer to humanity in general, not just to a specific individual. The word is closely tied to Adamah, meaning ground or earth, emphasizing the connection between humans and the soil from which they were formed. This linguistic link isn't just poetic, it's foundational to understanding how ancient writers viewed humanity's relationship to the natural world. Here's the fascinating part. In the early chapters of Genesis, Adam doesn't initially function as a proper noun. It's not Adam as we think of it today. In the original Hebrew, the text often speaks of the Adam, Har-Adam, a generic term for a human being. It's only later, as the narrative unfolds, that Adam begins to be used as a proper name for an individual. This subtle shift in usage carries enormous implications. The early use of the Adam suggests that the figure we call Adam might have been meant to represent humanity as a whole, not just one man. The emphasis isn't on his individuality, but on his connection to all humans, past, present, and future. In this sense, Adam isn't just a person, he's a symbol, an archetype of the human condition. He embodies the universal truths about what it means to be human, formed from the earth, animated by divine breath, and placed within a world full of beauty and responsibility. This broader interpretation gains even more weight when you consider how the Bible uses Adam in other contexts. Throughout the Old Testament, the word appears in passages that clearly refer to humanity collectively. For example, in Psalm 8, the psalmist marvels at how God has crowned Adam, humankind, with glory and honor, giving them dominion over creation. Here, Adam isn't Adam the individual, it's humanity as a species. Even in Genesis itself, there's a moment where the symbolic nature of Adam becomes strikingly clear. When God curses the ground after the fall, he declares, "By the sweat of your brow, you will eat your food until you return to the ground, since from it you were taken, for dust you are, and to dust you will return." This isn't just a curse for Adam the man. It's a universal truth about all humans, a reminder of our shared mortality and our connection to the earth. But let's take this one step further. If Adam was originally a collective term, could it mean that the figure of Adam in Genesis 2 is less about one man and more about humanity's beginnings as a whole? Could the story of Adam and Eve be a symbolic narrative about the origin of humankind, rather than the biography of two literal individuals? This idea isn't just a modern reinterpretation, it has roots in ancient Jewish thought. Rabbinic writings often explore the symbolic dimensions of Adam, viewing him as a representation of humanity's spiritual and moral struggles. The symbolic reading of Adam also opens the door to a deeper understanding of his name's connection to Adamah. In this view, Adam isn't just the first man. He's the earthling, the one who represents humanity's unique position as creatures formed from the dust of the ground yet bearing the divine image. This duality, earth and spirit, dust and divinity, captures the essence of what it means to be human. And then there's the creation of Eve. In Genesis 2, Eve is formed from Adam's rib, but the Hebrew word used here, tselah, can also mean side. This detail has sparked centuries of debate about its symbolic meaning. Some ancient interpretations suggest that Adam and Eve were originally a single being, split into two to create the first man and woman. If true, this further underscores the idea of Adam as a universal archetype rather than a solitary individual. The story of Cain, Adam and Eve's firstborn son, contains one of the most overlooked mysteries in the Bible. After killing his brother Abel, Cain is confronted by God and cursed to wander the earth. But what happens next is where things get interesting. Cain cries out, saying, "My punishment is more than I can bear. Anyone who finds me will kill me." Anyone? Who exactly is Cain afraid of? If Adam, Eve, Cain, and Abel were the only humans on earth at the time, where are these others coming from? And it doesn't stop there. In the very next verses, Cain leaves the presence of the Lord, settles in the land of Nod, east of Eden, and marries a wife. Not only does he find people in Nod, but he also builds a city. A city! A place that inherently requires a population far more than just a handful of family members. This part of Genesis raises enormous questions about the traditional understanding of Adam and Eve as the sole progenitors of the human race. The presence of people outside of their immediate family suggests that the world was already populated with other humans who, intriguingly, are not directly tied to Adam and Eve in the narrative. The land of Nod isn't described as an empty wilderness. It's a named location, implying it was known to the writer and, perhaps, to the audience of the text. The very fact that Cain can settle there and start a new life implies the existence of a society capable of sustaining him. The text doesn't explain where these people came from, and that silence has sparked centuries of speculation. One possibility is that these people were part of the humanity created in Genesis 1, that male and female who were commanded to be fruitful and multiply and fill the earth. If Genesis 1 and Genesis 2 describe different acts of creation, as some scholars suggest, then Cain's wife and the inhabitants of Nod could belong to a separate lineage of humans, distinct from Adam and Eve's family. Another interpretation comes from ancient Jewish traditions, which suggest that the creation of Adam and Eve wasn't necessarily the first or only creation of humans. Some rabbinic sources propose the existence of pre-Adamite humans, communities, or populations that existed before the story of Adam begins in Genesis 2. In this view, Adam and Eve represent the beginning of a specific lineage, one chosen by God for a unique role in his plan, while other humans existed independently. Cain's fear of being killed further supports the idea that other humans were already present. His plea to God wouldn't make sense if no one else existed. In response, God marks Cain with a sign to protect him, ensuring that anyone who encounters him will not harm him. This interaction assumes the existence of a larger population that Cain could encounter during his wandering. Then there's the city. Building a city isn't a one-man job. It requires labor, resources, and a population to inhabit it. Cain naming the city after his son, Enoch, suggests that it was established as a legacy for his family, but the very existence of such a settlement implies a network of relationships, trade, and social structures that go far beyond Adam and Eve's immediate descendants. The pre-Adamite theory stems from the idea that Genesis 1 and Genesis 2 describe two distinct acts of creation. In Genesis 1, we see the creation of humanity as a species, male and female. He created them, a population spread across the earth. This humanity is given a general command: be fruitful and multiply, fill the earth and subdue it. There's no mention of Adam, Eden, or the intimate, personal details found in Genesis 2. This creation is vast, plural, and global in scope. Genesis 2, on the other hand, shifts focus. Adam is formed from the dust of the ground and placed in Eden, a specific and cultivated environment. This isn't a broad creation of humanity, it's the beginning of a particular story, a chosen lineage. The pre-Adamite theory sees Adam and Eve as representatives of this specific group, chosen by God to carry out a distinct role in human history, while other humans existed outside the garden. Ancient Jewish traditions provide intriguing support for this idea. Rabbinic literature, such as the Midrash, contains references to pre-Adamic beings. These texts suggest that God may have created other humans before Adam, either as a separate creation or as part of an ongoing divine process. Some writings even hint at previous worlds that were created and destroyed before the world described in Genesis. Early Christian thinkers also explored the possibility of pre-Adamites. In the 17th century, theologian Isaac LaPeria argued that humans mentioned in Genesis 1 were distinct from Adam and Eve, whom he saw as the progenitors of the Jewish people. According to LaPeria, the Bible's silence about the origin of Cain's wife and the people of Nod points to the existence of humans before or apart from Adam's lineage. His controversial ideas were condemned as heretical at the time, but they opened the door to a deeper exploration of this possibility. From a theological perspective, the pre-Adamite theory addresses some of the inconsistencies and gaps in the Genesis narrative. It explains the presence of other people in Cain's story, the rapid spread of civilizations, and the command to fill the earth as something already in progress. It also suggests that Adam and Eve's story isn't about the biological origin of all humans, but about the beginning of God's covenant with a specific group. Beyond theology, the pre-Adamite theory aligns intriguingly with scientific discoveries about human origins. Fossil evidence shows that anatomically modern humans have existed for hundreds of thousands of years, long before the traditional biblical timeline places Adam and Eve. This doesn't necessarily contradict the Bible. Instead, it suggests that the Genesis story operates on a different level, focusing on a specific narrative rather than providing a complete history of humanity. The implications of the pre-Adamite theory are profound. If humans existed before Adam, then the story of Genesis becomes not a universal account of humanity's beginning, but a focused story of one family's relationship with God. Adam and Eve are no less significant, but their role shifts. They become representatives of a chosen lineage, set apart for a divine purpose, while the rest of humanity continues its existence outside the garden. This theory also sheds light on the universality of the human experience described in Genesis. The themes of fall, exile, and redemption aren't limited to Adam and Eve, they reflect the struggles of all humanity. By acknowledging the existence of humans outside of Eden, the pre-Adamite theory expands the scope of the biblical narrative, making it richer and more inclusive. The story of Adam has been a cornerstone of religious doctrine for thousands of years. It's the story of humanity's beginnings, the fall from grace, and the need for redemption. But when we step back and look at the details, the cracks in this traditional interpretation start to show. What emerges is a much deeper, more layered narrative, one that challenges everything we thought we knew about human origins and opens up entirely new possibilities for how we understand our place in creation. The idea that Adam and Eve were the only humans or even the first humans doesn't hold up under close scrutiny. The Bible itself offers hints of other people, other stories, and a world far more populated than the traditional narrative suggests. From the plural creation of humanity in Genesis 1 to the people of Nod in Genesis 4, the text contains clues that point to a much broader context, one that many have overlooked for centuries. This isn't just about filling in gaps in the story. It's about confronting a narrative that has been simplified over time, shaped by tradition, and handed down as unquestionable truth. But truth doesn't need to fear scrutiny. If anything, it grows stronger when challenged. And the truth is, the story of Adam is not diminished by acknowledging its complexities. In fact, it becomes richer, more meaningful, and more relevant when we embrace the layers beneath the surface. The doctrine that Adam and Eve are the biological ancestors of all humanity has shaped countless theological and cultural beliefs. But when we recognize that their story might be about something much bigger, something symbolic, representative, or even limited to a specific lineage, it allows us to see the Bible in a new light. It's no longer just a record of the past, it's a narrative that reflects the universal human experience. This shift in perspective doesn't erase the significance of Adam and Eve. Instead, it situates them within a broader framework. Their story becomes one of many, a chapter in the larger book of human history. They represent the introduction of divine covenant, morality, and purpose into the human story, a narrative that resonates not just with one group, but with all of us. What's even more fascinating is how this re-examination aligns with the world we see around us. Science and faith, often seen as at odds, begin to converge. Fossil records, genetic evidence, and ancient texts all point to a human history that is far older and more complex than the traditional timeline of Genesis suggests. These aren't contradictions, they're revelations, proof that our understanding of creation is still unfolding. This discovery isn't about undermining faith. It's about strengthening it by embracing the mystery and grandeur of creation. The Bible, when read carefully, isn't a static document. It's a living, breathing story, one that invites exploration, curiosity, and even questions. By digging deeper into the text, we honor its complexity and its power to inspire awe. To everyone who has stayed with me through this exploration, thank you for being part of this journey. Your curiosity, your willingness to question, and your passion for understanding are what make these conversations so meaningful. If this video made you think, sparked your curiosity, or even challenged your beliefs, I'm glad. That's what this is all about, discovering the layers of truth that make our story, as humans, so extraordinary. Don't forget to like, share, and comment below with your thoughts. I'd love to hear what you think about these ideas and what questions you have about the mysteries we've uncovered today. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.